Walter Block, I've been to a few conventions now where he's been the speaker later on in the day. And I'll tell you, you don't want to speak before Walter Block, because one of the things Walter does is he says, screw my talk, I'm going to explain why all the speakers before me were wrong. And but one of the things that I love hearing from him is how there was like 6 libertarians back in the day when he was hanging out with Rothbard, and now there's something like 5 or 10 million worldwide. This is a growing movement. It's borderless, and it's fantastic. Thank you so much for having me here. Sorry about kicking your butts in the War of 1812. We didn't have our own Revolutionary War. I guess that was ours. I don't know. We get our freedom granted to us from the Queen, and when I finally win Prime Minister one day, and I annex California and Washington and all those states, because they're lovely states, we'll grant you freedoms as granted by Her Majesty the Queen back then. So I was interested listening to Angela Keaton this morning. Someone asked her whether the Revolutionary War was necessary or not. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we've got socialist healthcare and we're not allowed to have guns, but we do enjoy most of the same freedoms or not freedoms that you do down here. We didn't fight any revolutionary wars about it. Today I want to talk to you about the audacity of hopelessness. This isn't an homage to Trump, it's just that the screen is cut off. This is something that I got from Penn Jillette, actually, I think coined this. When Obama came out with his book, Audacity of Hope, Penn was like, what? That's crazy. There's no such thing, there's no audacity in having a guaranteed or a likely outcome. The audacity is in when you're guaranteed to lose and still stepping up to the plate and playing the game. And I thought that was a great thing, because to me that describes a lot of what we do as libertarians. It's kind of like bashing our head against the wall. I should clarify one thing. As leader of the Libertarian Party, I know in the syllabus there it says that I'm equivalent to the chair of the American Party. It's not quite true. We also have a president of the Libertarian Party of Canada that would be probably more equivalent to the chair. In Canada, we have a parliamentary system, and the leader is elected by membership to represent the party. I'm kind of the public face of the party, and if we ever form government, if we get the most number of seats in Parliament, then I would become Prime Minister. So it's probably more akin to your presidential candidates, except we don't have primary elections and that sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting. It's a learning experience for me to see all the intricacies and esoterics of American politics, the delegates and superdelegates and all the things that go on here. It seems a little complicated to me, but that's it. So this was the picture in the Toronto Sun and the Calgary Sun, March 18th, the day after St. Paddy's Day. You can't tell, but that is my face getting punched right there. I stepped up to the plate and did a charity boxing match on St. Paddy's Day. And now I've never boxed before, never fought a day in my life. I trained hard for 2 months. Originally, I was the promoters were trying to challenge Justin Trudeau, our current Prime Minister, because he's known as a pugilist. He's done boxing matches in the past. They were hoping to attract him to this event and have him fight me. So I started training 2 months in advance for this, and I worked really hard at this. I put my blood, sweat, and tears. I was at the gym every night, up early in the morning jogging. I was committed to this cause. I put my family on hold, my life on hold, put everything into this. And the night of the fight, I got punched in the nose, and everything kind of fell apart. I got lit up. I bled all over the place. I embarrassed myself, was totally humiliated in front of family, friends, all of Canada. This was me the day before the fight. I had all sorts of confidence. My trainer is an ex-UFC fighter, and he was giving me all sorts of confidence. I was sure I was going to win the fight. I put in all this work. I had Nick Ring telling me that I was gold, baby. I was going to win this one. But this was me after the fight. Not looking so. And to me, this is kind of reminiscent of how it feels like to run as a libertarian in libertarian politics. We put so much hard work, dedication, and effort. We step into the ring, and we get bloodied up. I mean, we costs us, in many cases, our careers. It affects our family life. It affects our personal finances. Not to mention the opportunity cost of all the things we could be doing other than running as a libertarian politician to step into a ring to get completely annihilated. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today, because I see a lot of libertarians who get discouraged by the constant bloodying of our noses and the constant feeling of not getting anywhere in this world. But I think there's reason to be encouraged. A little bit about me, I grew up on a farm in northern Alberta, and so I'm a farm boy. This is my dog Bernie and myself. That's me just about to go into a grain bin to shovel for my life, because not to get suffocated by the grain coming into the bin. Now in Alberta we have a socialist government. The New Democratic Party just took office, and they enacted legislation that prevents kids from having to work like that. So now, my kids will never have to work a day in their life. They can just play video games. They never have to learn the value of hard work. It's fantastic. They're really enjoying it. I went on, through most of my adult life, I've been involved in emergency services, firefighter, paramedic. And, if you think about it, what I'm doing now is a natural extension of this. I feel I fight mindlessly destructive forces that seek to destroy everything now just as much as I did then as a firefighter and paramedic. The other thing that I did, and this is the thing that kind of gave me the opportunity to launch into the public spotlight, is I did a bunch of filmmaking. And one of the projects I worked on up in the oil sands area in Fort McMurray was a project with Neil Young and Daryl Hannah. And they came up to Fort McMurray and they saw the horrors of the oil sands, the fact that we're gonna burn this world down with our carbon dioxide emissions and whatnot. And Neil Young went straight to Washington, D.C. after this and explained to the American people in the world how we're committing genocide against Aboriginal people. He explained how we are a blight on mankind and how we look like Hiroshima. And I had to speak up. I wrote an article that went viral in the Huffington Post, and it had very libertarian-oriented themes explaining how it was the industrial smokestacks of the Industrial Revolution that actually led to Neil Young being able to take his 36-year-old son, who's a severe cerebral palsy patient, first of all, being able to live as long as he is, being able to have the excess wealth from being able to noodle on a guitar and sing highly into a microphone. I mean, that kind of activity never would have been possible without capitalism and the Industrial Revolution. He would be outside in the oppressive nature trying to find food, and his boy would have died a very early death. So I thought it was a little ironic that he was up there criticizing the very thing keeping him employed and his son alive. So I wrote an article about this. This launched me to the public spotlight, and it also gave me an opportunity to work on a project that I'm still working on, and hopefully there's some folks from LA that can help me on this, because one of the things as a filmmaker up in Fort McMurray in the oil sands is that we continually get a steady stream of people from LA for some reason coming up there to explain to us how horrible we are to the planet, and explain to us that we're wrecking the environment. And we get Leonardo DiCaprio, James Cameron, Neil Young, all these people. So I thought it would, modeling after them, the way we create social changes, we come down on our high horse and condescend upon people and explain to them why they're wrong and how they ought to be living. So I thought about this film called Tar Sands Messiah, about an environmentalist from the oil sands who comes to Los Angeles to shut it down and shut Hollywood down for its environmental crimes against humanity and spices and all that sort of thing. And in an homage to Neil Young, I'm bringing solutions as well, not just pointing out problems. And I've got what I call the smart car of the dog sled world. It's my little lap dog attached to a child sled, and it's low carbon emissions, 100% organic, and it'll allow you folks to get off the internal combustion engine once and for all from there. I've also got a carbon capture mask for joggers. You don't have to feel bad about excess CO2 emissions when you're jogging. It captures all that, and you can sell it to people who want to put a price on carbon. It seems like they want to buy it. So those are some of the things that have kept me occupied. But you know, my ideological life has led me down a pretty radical path. Probably about 10, 12 years ago is when I started discovering the ideas of libertarianism and liberty. And in fact, you know, 6 months later, I found myself just abolishing government altogether was probably the best thing, and I became an anarchist. Now, I hope you don't think too harshly of me. I know, you know, libertarians are, you know, in the Libertarian Party of Canada, we're kind of comprised of 4 different types of libertarian. There's the classical liberal, there's the minarchist, there's the anarcho-capitalist, and there's the constitutionalist. And the challenge is to keep everyone together and united and doing the same thing. And so I don't lead with anarchy. I don't tell people that outside friendly rooms like this that I'm an anarchist, but you know, I kind of feel like this is a 12-step program or something right now, and I'm confessing to you that, yeah, I'm an anarchist. Don't hate me. But you know, early in my anarchism, I decried and denounced political action. In fact, I was a terrible troll on the internet, explaining to other libertarians how they're supporting the government implicitly, how they're trying to support violence in running for office. And I don't know if you've ever heard anything like this from anarchists before. Yeah. And so, you know, when I first found out about libertarianism, I immediately wanted to run for office, and then anarchists quickly smacked that out of me, and then I smacked it out of a bunch of other people, and I feel horrible for that now because I've come full circle. And it didn't come easy, because about a year before I started running for Prime Minister of Canada, I wrote an article explaining why political action and voting might be immoral. And here I was now running for Prime Minister and asking people to vote for me and engaging in the very thing that I had decried as immoral before. And how did this happen? How did I have this about face? Well, there was incessant, I guess, convincing from a couple of people in the Libertarian Party who thought I'd be a good spokesperson, and they kept bringing up this guy and saying, this guy, you can't tell me, Tim, that he contributed to statism. He did not contribute to the state. He was a politician, and he introduced so many people to the ideas of liberty, and you can't tell me, Tim, that the world isn't better off because this guy stood up on a political stage and delivered a message to the people unflinchingly and truthfully. And that convinced me. I realized that I had been wrong, that I had denounced political action wrongly. And I'm here to say sorry if you were one of the people I trolled earlier on in my life. I've changed my ways. This was the meme that I guess put me on the map. So what happened was I was convinced to run for office, and my original plan was to run in the general election in 2015. This was back in late 2013, early 2014. 2 days after I committed to the party to run for office, my member of parliament resigned, and I was thrown into a by-election. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to file papers. I had no idea where to start. And so I found you know, a young kid to help me out, and we started putting out all these memes, and this was one of them. I can't take credit for this. I think actually that Austin Peterson may have originally coined this phrase. I'm not sure where we got it, but this one took off. It went all over the world. You know, it got me on Fox News and CNN. Gawker did a story on me. By the way, I'm glad to see that the Hulkster has put it to Gawker lately. It's poetic justice for me. But and then even our state TV in Canada made fun of me. This hour is 22 minutes, which is our version of the Daily Show. Made a bunch of these memes. I want bi-curious Nova Scotian professional wrestlers to openly smoke crack cocaine in public restaurants while soliciting prostitutes after clubbing baby seals that have trespassed their property. So, Austin, I don't know if you're here, but if you're mad about me taking your meme, you can have this one if you want. So the big question is, why do we do politics? Let me hear from you guys. What is it? Why are you in politics? Anyone want to shout it out?
Insanity.
Insanity. Self-defense. Okay, self-defense. Change the world. Professional development. I like that. That's good. Yeah. Why the hell not? Yeah, sure.
Limit the government.
Limit government, right.
And the babes. There's a lot of babes in politics.
And the babes, absolutely, yeah. we need to, there's the women that are in the movement are wonderful and they're babes, but they're very few. We need to work on that somehow. We need to attract more women. But, the real reason I think we could all agree that we got involved in politics is because we do want to change the world. We want to make this a better place. We want more freedom. We want more liberty. And so that is why we do this ultimately. It's not necessarily to get power. It's not to get prestige. It's not to get into office. The end of the day, the end goal, the long-term vision is to create a freer world for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren. And that's why I do this, and I hope that's why you do this as well. And there's two basic models for change ways we can think about being a change agent in this world. And the traditional model is that it's top down, that what you need to do is get to the top of the pyramid, and then what you can do is pull some legislative levers, you can enact some laws, and things will get better. Or you can repeal some laws, and suddenly things are all better. Another model of change is that we are embedded in a self-organizing system, that government actually emerges from our belief system. It emerges from the culture of the people that support it. And that's the model that I tend to believe is true. And this is why I think mainstream politics is generally futile. And the number one reason is because they're operating from a false paradigm. So if you're of the belief that what you need to do is get into that office, get into that seat of power, and then you can make changes. And by the way, I should acknowledge, I was sitting in on the elected officials panel there and listening to them talk, and I want to pause and just say thank you very much for your service and for getting involved and for making a difference on your town councils and your boards and whatnot. I think that's fantastic, and so at no point do I ever want to give the impression that we should not try to get elected. I don't want to give that at all. But I do want to point out that the primary driver of government, the thing that supports it, is not legislation, it's not rules, it's belief systems. And you can look at this. I mean, Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, as much as they would be disasters if they were actually able to enact their policies, I don't think that there's any evidence that suggests that changing out that politician and that president, and even if we had a libertarian in there, would make that huge a difference in terms of policies. I just think that they're narrowly constrained by public opinion, by political forces, and that we give politicians way too much credit for having way too much power. We both blame them too much and we praise them too much. We elevate them and we look down on them. I think that at the end of the day, they're people, and most of them are doing the best they can with what they have. But one of the incentives of politics is to get these short-term wins. It's to tell people what they want to hear, to get into office, and in doing that, we give up ground on culture, I believe. The other thing to understand is that politics is generally behind the zeitgeist. I don't believe that politicians set the zeitgeist so much as they reflect it. A successful politician reflects culture, they don't drive it. So this is why, again, I think Sanders and Trump are perfect examples of this. You have, two people that are saying things that the public want to hear. They're perfectly reflecting aspects of American culture. They're disestablishment, and they're saying things that have no reference to any principle, but they're things that people want to hear, and that's what's driving their popularity. So these are my assumptions, and I may be saying some things that are controversial, and I could be completely wrong. I've been wrong about so many things in my life, believe me. So I don't take it as an insult if you want to challenge me on some of these things. And the best place to challenge me is at the bar later. I love rum and coke and beer and that sort of thing. So please come up to me and chat with me about this stuff. I don't want to be wrong. I've been wrong too many times. But my first assumption is that there's no such thing as government. That government is a fiction. It's an abstraction. That in fact, you know, we have the name government, but it's the same as the name Crips or Bloods or the Mafia. It's just another label we put on a criminal gang. And usually, you know, but the problem with government is that it's ascribed these sort of magical properties, that it's allowed to do things that you and I aren't. It has special rights. The people in that gang are allowed to do things that other people aren't allowed to do. And why is it? Why is it that they're allowed to do that? Why do we have the state? Well, I say that it's a byproduct of a belief system called statism. So it's the belief system really that is at issue here. And the other thing I would assert is that, you know, and this is one of the things that I felt trapped to so long, into thinking that there's an endpoint, that if we could just get rid of the state, now will be paradise. Now we'll have achieved Libertopia, everything will be good, we can stop doing everything. Well, I don't believe that. I don't believe there's an endpoint called Libertopia. I believe that liberty is more of a process than it is a destination. And this is something that will never end. There's always going to be an initiatory force in this world that is legitimized by a belief system. And so we're always probably going to have the state. And we're always going to have some version of it. And we can never stop. And if libertarianism as we know it, let's say we get a perfectly objectivist government or a minarchist government that some of us would like, well, my job still isn't done. Now I'm moving on from the status quo libertarian parties to the next fringe party, because I see my job as change agent. Keep the ball moving, keep involved in the process. There's no end point here for me. The last assumption I'm going to make is that libertarians are only going to get elected if A, the majority of voters are libertarian. Is that the case now? No. B, we fool voters into thinking we are statists. C, voters really like you personally. Or D, voters just really hate everyone else, so they vote for you anyways. Now, I would argue that only one of those is the kind of change that will create the kind of change we want to see in the world, that will create the why of why we're in politics. And that is A, we need to make libertarians. And you know, so we are doing the real work here of actually shifting culture, in my opinion. And this is backed up by sociological research. There was a study done in 2011 that showed there's a tipping point. When societies adopt an unshakable belief system, when 10% of a population at the most, so it doesn't even have to be 10%, many times it's much lower, but when that small group of people adopts an unshakable belief, that the rest of the population then adopts that belief system. And so our goal, in my opinion, ought to be to shift culture. It ought to be to try to hit that 10% a tipping point. It ought to be to spread liberty, the ideas of liberty. We need people to inscribe liberty on their hearts and on their minds and get 10% of those people. And when we hit that number, when we hit the tipping point, things will emerge. It might not be the Libertarian Party getting into power. I'm fine with that up in Canada. You liberals and conservatives, you follow the herd. You follow the libertarian herd and enact libertarian policies. That's great. I've won in that case. And I'll move on to the next cultural tipping point. That's kind of the operating paradigm I come from. And one of the reasons is, you know, a few years ago I did a grad degree and I studied self-organizing systems. I looked at the way actually high-functioning teams of firefighters actually operated from self-organizing principles. In other words, they weren't static. There's a lot of problems with traditional command and control style mental models. There's empirically more chaos. Fires take longer to put out. And so one of the things I came across, and one of the problems I had, was distinguishing what's a self-organizing system, what's not a self-organizing system. And it wasn't very easy to do, but then I found this quote, that we must now recognize our organizations, as indeed the entire cosmos, are all self-organizing systems. Not just a little bit, not just in some special part, but from the beginning to the end, top to the bottom, it's all self-organization. That was kind of an epiphany for me, because I realized that the real problem here isn't government, it's the belief in government. The belief in government creates this self-organizing system where we have a gang of people that gangs up on us, and then we say, thank you, may I have another? And that if we want change, it has to be self-organizing from the bottom up, not the top down. And everything starts with belief. Belief informs everything. So our behavior, including what we eat, what we believe about diet, what we believe about exercise, what we believe about health, it all starts with belief, and our behavior emerges from that. And so all our systems, whether they're organizational, government, our party system, how we organize as libertarians, how we organize our family, this all starts with belief systems. I mean, if you believe that there are evil people and that you'll get just rewards by killing them, well, then you're going to go off and kill people. And this goes for people in North America and people in the Middle East. It seems like we both have beliefs that involve killing other people, and we'll get just rewards for doing this. And so these beliefs that aren't congruent with reality have negative unintended consequences, violent unintended consequences. But there's ways we can show up in our organizations that'll contribute to further dogmatism, that will contribute to further chaos. There's ways we can show up that will contribute to better growth, better organization, and more life. And so the first way we can show up is like this, the Archon, which is Greek for ruler. And an Archon, and this is whether you're a commander in a fire service, or whether you're the leader of a political party, or whether you're the Prime Minister of Canada, if you're an Archon, you believe that leadership is all about overcoming resistance. The problem is that you're not an anarchist, and if I just bat you over the head with enough reason and evidence, you, sir, will change your mind. How many of you have changed your mind about something because someone just kept bashing you over the head, trying to overcome your resistance? I have. You have? Well, this is the wrong room to ask that question in. I'll talk about, if we have time, I'll talk about that a little later, but libertarians, I believe, are outsiders generally. We've grown up in conditions where we've been outside the group and the status quo, and so we've gotten used to using reason and evidence as our so we can get past that kind of bashing over the head and do, oh, thank you, thank you for correcting me. But I think that's not true of most people. And I think most people need a little bit of love and connection to get past some of their overcome. But the Archon also has an external locus of control. It's always about someone else. It's never about myself. And if I could just control the other people, if I could just get everything out here organized, well, then my life will be so much better. And they also, when they do behave in the world, it shows up as negative unintended consequences. This desire to control the external world has all sorts of negative unintended consequences. And so this stretches libertarianism a little far. I wouldn't call this libertarianism, but I do think that some of these things are informed by libertarian ethics. I don't think it's immoral to be an asshole boss, for example, but I do think it does have consequences that are not pragmatic. Now, can contrast this with something I call the liberator, where you see leadership as attraction. You are attracting people to your cause, you're attracting people to your ideas, and the first thing you do is focus on yourself. When you have this type of leader show up, positive unintended consequences come. Innovation emerges, creativity, growth, life. This is a group of libertarians, and it's very difficult to herd them, to organize them. This is how I used to do it. I don't know if anyone else has had the experience of staying up till 3 in the morning because someone on the internet is wrong, but I used to do it on a regular basis. That's me right there herding cats. If I could just give them the right magic argument, then everything will be better. That didn't work. I came across this quote and I thought it was very telling, that we're looking at change all wrong. We're imagining that we have to overcome resistance, when in fact what's happening is clients aren't resisting change. They're being attracted to a core of self-esteem, dignity, and a sense of personal power. In other words, they are attracted to something. And so if we want to change hearts and minds, we need to provide value. We need to provide some sort of attraction to people that will cause them to see that it actually improves their personal power, it improves their self-esteem, improves their dignity, and that's why they ought to adopt it. And so this is how we herded cats on the farm. I mean, you just put down some fresh cow's milk, and they would all come running, and they would organize themselves. You provide value, and you can even organize libertarians, believe it or not. Yeah. And so that's what we did. You know, our strategy over the past 2 years, I took what I had learned in grad school and my hard life lessons of all the mistakes I'd made being a troll, and I took them, and I really wanted to serve membership. I wanted to empower them. I wanted to decentralize control. And we went from, we doubled, we actually had the best year in our party's 43 history last year in terms of vote count and in terms of number of candidates we fielded. And the one number that I'm most proud of is that we doubled our per candidate vote count. Now, that to me tells me that we doubled the Libertarian brand. I can't take full credit for that. In fact, I think that I can credit a lot of what you guys are doing down here, because Canadians pay attention to US politics. And the work you're doing down there is spilling over to Canada. And so all these forces together tell me that the brand of libertarianism is on the rise. And you know, I think we got maybe 2% of the vote. We're not that far from the tipping point, really. There's reason to hope, and if we double every election cycle, it's not going to take us long to create a culture that demands freedom. But our strategy was this, that the most important thing that we can do as political activists, as politicians standing on the stage, is win over hearts and minds. It's not necessarily doing things that are going to get us votes, although it's important to try to get votes too, but more important than votes, the whole reason we want to get votes is so we can just have a bigger platform to connect with hearts and minds, like Ron Paul did. And so we can never sacrifice the idea of connecting people with the ideas of liberty in order to get, you know, an expedient vote or something like that. We need to be clear on what winning is. And I stress this over and over to candidates, because when you step into the ring and you leave with a bloody nose, having bled all over the ring, being humiliated in front of family and friends, spending all this time, it's easy to get discouraged and say, that was a terrible idea. I should never have done that. And I wanted a win and I didn't get it. Well, I say wrong, you did get a win. You introduced libertarianism to people who never would have heard it before. You contributed to a culture of liberty. You are doing far more than anyone who wins an election on platitudes and empty promises. The other thing we wanted to do was be difficult to dismiss. And it was very easy to do, because our platform essentially said, look, you know, when we get to Parliament, we're going to blow it up and rip up all the rules, and then things will be better. And that scares the heck out of people. I mean, to an anarchist like me, it sounded fantastic. Let's do it. But you know, this is the impression people had of us, because our platform was a series of principles. Don't initiate force, privatize everything, yada yada. People don't understand that. And so what we did was we switched our platform to be more pragmatic and stay principled. Now this lost us some support, but it also got us a lot of support. So for example, in Canada we have a high tax rate. We said let's lower the tax rate to a 15% flat tax. Now my anarchist friends said, you betrayed us, you're for 15% rape, how can you do this, you're for initiation of force? And I find that argument so ridiculous. This is a principled stand, this is less force. It's like saying, you know, I'm seeing a giant Leviathan beat up a little guy in a back alley. I rush in there and try to grab his arm. I know I can't take him down, but at least I'm trying to stop one arm to control the beating a little bit. And I have my anarchist pal behind me saying, oh, well, you're for him getting beat up because you can't stop the beating. Listen, I didn't start the beating. I'm just trying to hold on to one arm. Maybe you could dive in here and give me a little hand stopping this. You know, I have a real problem with anarchists, and I am one, but I consider these guys, you know, not fully taking their beliefs seriously, because they won't wade into the fray with us and mix it up. It's messy, it's not perfect. We're not going to get Libertopia, we're not, you know, but we can get a little bit more freedom if we just band together and quit dumping on each other. Right. Yeah. And that brings me to my next point, which is where we're at and where I think we need to go in terms of liberty activism. And I'm seeing all sorts of encouraging signs here. It's great. But this is kind of liberty activism 1.0. It's focused on others. It's, if you just, you know, smarten up, this world will be better. If you stop being a libertarian candidate, things will get better. It focuses, it's a victim mentality. It's constantly, oh, I'm oppressed and I'm powerless and it's the state this and the state that. There's a fixed mindset. It's, you're a statist, I'm an anarchist, you're bad, I'm good. There's no room for connection there. And there's a problem fixation. People are fixated on everything that's wrong, and it kind of creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Liberty Activism 1.0 offers no value. There's nothing that anyone will take from it. You know, listening to an anarchist rant on and on about the horror and evil of the state does nothing to help me. How does that help me in any way? That is completely repulsive to me. It tries to overcome resistance. We talked about the problems with that. It amplifies differences. And Libertopia is always over the horizon. It's always over there. If we just do this, then maybe we can get there and be happy finally. But I want to contrast that with what I'm seeing emerge and what I encourage. And that's what I call Activism 2.0. The 2.0 activist looks in the mirror and says, what am I doing to contribute to this problem? This was a hard lesson for me. As a father, I realized I wasn't following the non-initiation of force in my own home. And I had to amend how I was being a parent. And I found that as I was able to implement the non-initiation of force in my own home, as I was able to show up as a more empathetic and entrepreneurial-minded captain at work, as a fire officer, that it worked. Libertarianism worked. Imagine that. And I was an authentic libertarian, and suddenly my voice had a lot more power when I spoke about these principles. Liberty Activist 2.0 has an entrepreneurial mindset. They're constantly looking for ways of providing value to people. They have a growth mindset. In other words, they're not stuck in this idea that the world is fixed and that, you know, that they can never make any change, and that people are just socialists, they're just SJWs, they're just this, they're just that. There's a growth mindset. They look for opportunities to exploit. And they're solution-oriented. They say, look at what's working over here. Look at this cooperative. Look at this Elon Musk's latest project. Look at what Neil Young did by inventing this eco-friendly car for $1 million. He's burning slightly less carbon dioxide sometimes, except that it takes a bunch of diesel trucks to get him that clean fuel. We won't talk about that though, but there's a solution there that we can focus on. They offer incredible values to others that connect with hearts and minds. And they understand that liberty isn't something over the horizon. It's not over there. It's right here in the ring, right now. As I'm getting punched in the face, I'm living my highest value, and I'm happy. This is where liberty is. I'm going to skip this stuff because I think we're right on the edge of town. But I want to tell you what the epiphany was that brought me to this place. Because for a long time, I was asleep. I wasn't taking my values that seriously. And a few years ago, you know, as a firefighter, I was leading a group of guys into a basement fire in a house that looked something like this. It was a hoarder's house, and so there was all these garbage bags and just a bunch of debris everywhere. You couldn't touch the floor with your feet. And I don't know if you've ever watched Backdraft or Chicago Fire or any of these shows, but you can't, it's nothing like that in real life, all right? You can't see your hand in front of your face. Anyways, we got into this fire, and it was getting hotter and hotter. We couldn't see in front of our face, and we got the order to evacuate. And so I sent my guys down. The way you exit a fire is, if you're holding onto the hose with your left hand, you turn around and grab it with your right hand and exit. And so I made sure my guys were on their way out, and I turned around to grab the hose, and I fell backwards into this mess, in this pile, in this hoarder's house. You know, the heat was incredible. It was continuing to build, and I panicked. I couldn't find that hose. When I did find it, I ended up going the wrong way because I ended up on the wrong side of it. And I knew for a fact that I was going to die. There was no doubt in my mind. I went to immediately all the things I had left unsaid with my kids, all the things I had left undone in my life, the fact that I was working a job that had nothing to do with what I was passionate about, had nothing to do with what created the most meaning for my life. And here I was just gonna die in a hoarder's house for no reason. There wasn't any life to be saved down there. There's just a bunch of junk in there, and I was gonna die amongst it. And obviously I made it out of the fire. I'll spare you the details because we're pressed for time. But that was a changing point for my life. I immediately started dumping everything that wasn't providing me meaning, and started chasing the things that did provide meaning, that I was passionate about, that I felt were my life's purpose. That's what led me down this road. And I think that a lot of us, and I'm speaking to my fellow anarchists that aren't here right now, who will never hear this, but I believe they're afraid of the fact that they may have a lot of power to affect change. Because if you have power to affect change, it means you might have a responsibility to do something about it. It means you might have to step into that ring, take a few bloody noses. It means you might have to stop playing small, stop cutting other people down, and have the spotlight shine on yourself for a change and start taking some of those punches. But I think that's what's necessary. And so I hope that you will remember that you're gonna die someday. And I wanna thank you for doing what you're doing right now, because we live on through our kids and our legacy. And I think everyone here is leaving a legacy. And I just have one last kind of question for you guys. Here's a scenario for you. You're standing on the roof of a car. It's the zombie apocalypse, by the way. And there's a horde of zombies surrounding you. You have a gun full of bullets. Do you put a bullet in your head, take yourself out of the fight, and save yourself the suffering? Or do you put a smile on your face, start shooting zombies, and let fly the dogs of war, even though you're gonna get eaten? Which one is it? Dogs of war, baby. I'm in the right crowd. That's what I'm trying to say. Let it never be said that you didn't leave everything on the mat and in the ring. Let it never be said that you didn't bleed and sweat and grind for the cause. Let your kids never be embarrassed to call you their dad or their mom. I believe I'm in the right crowd. Thank you so much. Hope to talk to you later.